the Halloween party.
So what are you doing after we get done with our true crime?
Well, I wanted to spend time with Steven, so I thought we'd have breakfast. And then we're going, this is his choice, to go look for mannequins, children mannequins, to dress up as the Shining Twins for his party in months away in October. And
it's kind of like you shopping for Christmas. He's very well prepared.
he's very prepared. He has a list, he has a diagram he drew. The whole house.
He has a diagram?
It's on poster board. Brad come over and they drew it and they put the fence and they put everything. It's very detailed. And then we're going to also look, he saw where there's a dead body and it's opened, the stomach, and you put hors d'oeuvres and food in there.
By the way, did he order his ice machine?
Gonna be a fun day.
Yeah, I regularly go with Mike to look like mannequins to dress up as the two girls from The Shining.
He doesn't know if he's gonna keep him though, because he's got to throw blood on him.
Wow. So he's not.
I think these are red flags for me.
Well, I was about to say, there's no red flags.
I'm not gonna make stuff with my machine, but
What do you mean?
gift bags, and because he's also doing bobbin for pumpkins,
Pumpkins.
little pumpkins. So of course we have to have a gift.
I hate Halloween so much.
I'm not Halloween. If it's Christmas, I'm all into it.
Well, Christmas is happy, like
Why?
gifts and little children and.
Dead people and things like that make him happy.
Oh.
You do love murder, and you were very excited to see if maybe there was a serial killer in your
Right.
bloodline.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome?
No.
Well, not for the dead people. I'm just saying.
I mean, a successful
you have-
person that contributed to society would be exciting.
Or on the other side, someone that's,
Nope, not exciting.
I think it would be. What do you think, Sherry?
I think that you and Stephen are strange.
People are strange.
Well, I'm going to tell you, apple doesn't fall from the tree. Far from the tree, as
It does
Stephen
not
said.
fall from the tree, Sherry.
Fall from the tree, far from the tree, as Stephen says, with you guys. So you can't tell me if you knew that. Don't put this in your podcast. That if you knew you were related to MacDonald somehow,
No, I wouldn't admit that.
or who else?
Ted Bundy.
Or Bundy.
Because you really
That
like
would
Bundy.
be fascinating
No.
to find the bloodline and how it led up to your.
No, I think it'd be horrible. I mean, if you look at people that they are related, it's awful. In fact, there's a podcast called Tenfold More Wicked, and the murders in season 2 that took place in Scotland were back in 18 something, 19 something, and the family members still don't want their identities released or it to be known.
Well, in one of the documentaries, there's maybe 2, they interviewed Ted Bundy's brother, and it destroyed him.
It did.
The worst living conditions. Is
No,
awful.
I wouldn't tell anybody except y'all, because you'd be getting death threats. I watch Outlander, and that was
Get into that show.
it's a great show if you get past the first season, but they're doing a show until it comes back on called Men in Kilts.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Well,
And they brought up a murder briefly, in Scotland. And I wonder if it's that one. Scotland.
So a science teacher tells his class,
Oh,
oxygen is a must for breathing and for life. It was discovered in 1773. A blonde student responds, "Thank God I was born after 1773. Otherwise, I would have died without it."
You know, I laugh because they're so ridiculous. Though your first one today was pretty good.
How do astronomers organize a party?
How do what? Organize what?
Astronomers organize a party.
They plan it.
And you call me weird? And Stephen weird? Look at you two. You're both weird.
I was about to
You're
say,
weird too.
I know I'm weird, but I'm just drinking my
She's weird, both of you.
drink here.
Can you inherit that
Hold on.
weirdness?
I am not fascinated with any morbid things.
You're still weird in a different way.
How, mother?
I
Do
can
tell.
I can give y'all a list,
Just think of
but I
one
have
thing.
to think about it. You're just weird.
I see.
You're just weird. That's weird.
I'm just stirring my drink, waiting patiently.
Y'all
with no
know.
examples.
Y'all don't need examples. You know you're weird, both of you.
I know I am, but for different reasons.
It takes a weird
that
person.
you don't know about, and you just spit peanut on my table.
It takes a weird person. Weird people are fun.
And funny.
Maybe you're not weird.
I'm weird, but in ways you don't know about.
Oh, see, that's a good joke right there. Better than yours.
Oh, are you gonna choke?
Joke.
It sounded like you were choking.
Oh no, that was funny.
Did you hear the little choke coming up? Are you turning red?
You
Oh, you're choking. Are you okay? Can you breathe?
This is weird. That was good, wasn't it, Sherry?
You did this pump on video. Oh, that's funny. Okay. It's time to get serious.
Oh God.
Okay, Jeffrey MacDonald.
Oh, I need my, will you get my iPad off the couch, please?
Yes.
What?
I need to wipe my tears. I laughed so hard.
You need to sanitize your hands before you get into my peanut butter jar.
I never do that either.
I don't think you do it with witnesses.
No, I never have, but for some reason I just did it. I guess because I washed my hands. Okay, I'm
I've
ready.
seen you wash your hands. Turns the water on. Done. And she just does like this little bit. That's her washing her hands.
Yeah, if I pet the dogs or something. Because I only pet like that. You know.
No. As stated before, I've seen you wash your hands before after coming out of the bathroom is what I was talking about.
Oh.
And it's still done.
Okay, so the murder of Jeffrey MacDonald's wife and his two little girls. Okay, so this is probably one of the most controversial family annihilations. I think the only one that maybe compares a little bit is Scott Peterson.
Oh yeah.
Would he be considered a family annihilation?
Huh?
Would he be considered family annihilator?
Killing your wife and unborn kid, yeah. And I started noticing a pattern too in family annihilators. Not all of them, where the wife is sometimes pregnant, just like Colette was with a baby boy. That's been in 3 shows now that I've seen where they knew the sex of the child. It was a boy, which, by the way, there are just 2 biological sexes. And it's like they annihilate them. It's crazy. Okay, so surrounded by controversy, many think he was innocent. The Wilderness of Error that just came out, that series, it's very good. It keeps you guessing. But at the very end, Mark Smerling, the producer, you could tell he was like, because he had like second thoughts. So before we even get started, what do you guys think? What's your take?
I 100% had no doubt that he did it. As I'm reading the book, there's definitely some confirmations, but there's also some things that could easily be explained in his defense.
Right. That's why he had more than one trial.
He had multiple.
Yeah.
I just
So-
got to one area where we'll get into that.
So what do you think? Do you think he is innocent or guilty?
I think he's guilty.
Mhm.
But if you're sitting on a trial, it has to be reasonable doubt. If you're doing your job properly, I could see where you might acquit
Not
him.
these days.
Or, not these days, yeah,
But
but
there's two things which we'll get into that to me, it sums it up. Kind of, but we watched that Casey Lacey Peterson series when I was there, and there's one thing in that whole story that to me, Scott Peterson is more than likely innocent. At the very least, he shouldn't have been convicted.
No, too
And
much reasonable doubt.
It's the dog. It's the dog.
Well, he was convicted in the media.
Right. But it's like everybody's, he killed her at this time. There was no way he killed her at that time. And then she takes the dog for a walk and the dog returns without her.
I mean, I think he did it, but I think he was convicted in
You
the
need to
media.
watch the show.
Yeah, I'd watch the show because the dog gets it for me. I think he was a douchebag. I think that he, was, just the lowest scum to be pursuing a mistress at his wife's memorial and all that. But I don't see him kidnapping her while she's taking the dog for a walk. I don't see that. He would kill her in the house. So the dog returns home minus her.
Right.
So that right there, that needs to be explained. You got to tell me why she takes him for a walk and then all of a sudden the
But
dog comes back.
He kidnapped her to make it look, and then the dog come back.
Well, he was already
People
at
are
his
crazy.
He was already gone.
warehouse, and it was documented through his computer. He was already at the warehouse.
So that's kind of like the controversy around Jeffrey MacDonald, because, and I think part of it too is you can look at Jeffrey MacDonald. He's as much as, a scumbag when it comes to husband as Scott Peterson. But again, there are two things that to me, you cannot explain away. There's more, but there's two things that can't. So let's start with the crime itself. And it was a cold, rainy night, February 16th through the 17th. So again, it's kind of one of those things where it's the middle of the night, 1970. And young Green Beret Captain Jeffrey MacDonald, his beautiful wife, Colette, and two sweet little girls, Kimberly and Kristen. It was like the picture of, the American family. They had a little one-story garden apartment at Fort Bragg, which I had no idea. I'm like, what the heck is a garden apartment? And I guess it's like an apartment where you have several units, and then there's a garden somewhere on the property with like, at least you got some manicured, flowers and grass, etc. But sometimes they have an actual garden.
It was, but they were also single little bungalow homes.
Mm-hmm.
that you
Yeah.
could-
Which that's what theirs kind of looks like, or maybe I can't remember if it's connected to the apartment next to it.
No, so what was interesting, I didn't know this. There was actually a family that lived above them.
Okay.
And I had no idea. I thought that they were
Oh, really?
separated.
Oh.
Mhm.
Did they hear anything?
Yeah, the daughter did. Mhm.
What'd she hear?
One moment. Come back.
So while she's looking for that, so a lot of this is MacDonald. Okay. Where are you going? Hello? Okay. So he got off his regular shift at the base hospital. He was a surgeon. He then took both girls to feed the pony he had bought them for Christmas. And afterward, they returned home, showered, and he put on his blue pajamas. The family had a quick dinner because Colette, I didn't remember this, she had to get to her child psychology class. So she was in school. And then MacDonald put Kristen to bed, and then he fell asleep on the living room floor while watching television because he had just worked a 24-hour shift that day.
So here's the thing. He worked a regular job plus another job with a long shift or vice versa. Then he went and played basketball for some time and then came and did all that stuff. I mean, he was up for a very, very, very long time.
He was, and he was also on drugs, wasn't he? The hypers, whatever
Yeah.
those are called. Uppers.
Hyper.
About an hour later, Kimberly woke him up and asked to watch her favorite show, Laugh-In, which she did. And then she went back to bed once the show was over. And then about 40 minutes later, Colette returned, and both her and MacDonald had a couple drinks while watching television. And then in the middle of Johnny Carson, Colette, who was 4 months pregnant with their first boy, went to bed. MacDonald finished watching the show and then started reading a novel when Kristen started crying. And I was like, man, how is this guy awake? After working and all that. And then I, found out about the uppers. So he gave her some chocolate milk, and then he finished his book around 2 a.m. He then washed the dishes and went to the master bedroom. And there was little Kristen, she's the youngest, sleeping next to Colette. She had wet the bed, which it seemed to be pretty common, and he didn't want to disturb Colette, so he carried Kristen back to her room, grabbed a blanket, and fell asleep on the living room couch.
Did you, I was trying to look for that piece. Did you say that she peed in the bed on his side?
Yes, which I thought was interesting is actually, it seemed that the pattern from the question that Colette asked in class was that Kristen often slept with MacDonald, and she was the one that was usually on the couch.
Right.
Oh.
That was kind of an interesting deal. And it could just be that's how it happened that night, but I just thought that was interesting.
And then the forensic evidence piece that actually it was the oldest child's urine, supposedly, that they had found in the bed at that time.
So is Kristen the oldest?
I thought she was the youngest, but maybe she's the oldest.
No, Kristen is the youngest. Kimberly's the oldest.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why it's really weird. And they get to it as to why that might be significant.
Okay. So he said that Colette's shouting suddenly woke him up. And she said, Jeff, why are they doing this to me? Then he heard Kimberly screaming, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. So now at this point, he's fully awake. He saw 4 figures standing over him. He described one, and he was extremely detailed in his descriptions. He said that one was a black man wearing a fatigue jacket with E6 sergeant's stripes on the sleeves, 2 white men, and a woman with a floppy hat and stringy blonde hair. He thought she was holding a candle in front of her face, but they never found any candle residue. So later he said, well, maybe it was a flashlight. And she was chanting, acid is groovy, kill the pigs. So
Popular comment, and the hat back in that day.
right.
They called police pigs.
And it's supposedly her boots. He couldn't remember if they were white or brown, but they looked shiny. So they were either shiny boots or they were wet from rain.
And apparently in their area, it was actually uncommon for them to talk that way. It was more common on the West Coast, which is where the Manson things were, right? And
Yeah,
those items were in that magazine that you'll get to.
Interesting. So MacDonald said that he tried to get up, but the black man hit him with a club. He then felt a sharp pain on the right side of his chest. He said that he looked down and saw a glint of an ice pick blade. He struggled with the intruders as he tried to get up. They yanked his pajama top over his head onto his wrist, which he then used to fend off blade thrusts. The black man kept hitting him with the club. He tried to make his way to the hallway that led to the bedrooms to check on his family, but he passed out. When he came to, he discovered Colette on the master bedroom floor with the handle of a knife sticking out of her cheek or chest. Was it chest? I think it was chest.
Yeah.
On the bed's headboard, someone wrote pig in blood. MacDonald said that he pulled the knife out of her chest before starting mouth to mouth. Now, that's weird to me because I heard that you don't pull the knife out ever because it could be what's stopping a bleed out. So you leave the knife, especially if it's in the chest, because once you pull that knife out, it's just going to bleed all over the place. So I learned that years ago. I don't even remember where it was, if it was like a CPR class or something, but they say don't pull things out of people's bodies.
Never. I heard that the other day But when you're in a traumatic situation like that, you do things you wouldn't do. You don't.
Well, he's a surgeon though, number one, but
Yeah,
maybe he had to do that to do CPR because back then, you pressed.
right.
So he didn't, couple of things. They did blame him taking the knife out of her chest immediately on his surgical background, but you're right. That's typical, at least now. Don't know what it was back then, but he didn't do CPR. He only did mouth to mouth, and they kept like reiterating that.
So then there would be no reason to pull the knife out except to get your fingerprints on it and have a reason for your fingerprints to be on it.
Well, I know he's guilty 100%, but I also know, surgeon or not, you come home or you see something like that, your mind still works like a human being. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though I know he did it.
Because all the true crime where you've got doctors and stuff that do it, they don't overreact. They don't freak out. But I could see, but usually doctors are psychopaths anyway, believe it or not.
True.
Functioning psychopaths, but they're designed to operate in those conditions. But yes, I can give a little bit of credence to that was his wife, but personally I think he did it just gives a reason for his fingerprints to be on it. Then what's weird is he then said that he placed his pajama top over her chest.
Why?
And then went to check the girls.
That's an odd thing to do.
So both were lying in their bedrooms covered in blood. He called for help and said, "We've been stabbed. People are dying," which I thought the "people are dying" was very interesting how he phrased that.
I found the girl.
Okay.
She lived upstairs,
was a
right?
16-year-old babysitter. And she heard in early morning hours, she said she came out of a deep sleep and I heard Colette's voice. Woke her up. The voice I heard was "mad enough to kill." She couldn't distinguish the words. But she thought that she was saying, "What do you think I'm going to do while you are doing all of this? Do you think I'm going to be standing around here doing nothing? If you touch one hair of those children's head or my head, I'll kill you." Now, this was at least 5 years after the initial murder and interview of her, where she didn't really have a recollection, but that's pretty specific.
Well, did she say that when
Mm-mm.
they investigated? So it makes me wonder, was it just something she said later?
Me too. It always makes me wonder when they don't say anything now, like I immediately dismiss it. But there has been a lot of talk that they were arguing, and family members, knew that Colette was upset because he kept sleeping with these women.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she did not like it. And so she may have had her fill of it.
Yeah. And, if these words are correct, like, what do you think I'm going to do? Just sit around and do nothing? Or what am I going to do while you're doing all of this? He was trying to supposedly go to Russia with the boxing team, which actually wasn't even going to Russia, but that was an issue for them.
But
And he'd already,
a 16-year-old too, that's pretty detailed, knowing that he cheats. So, but why didn't she say it at the?
Yeah, and I found that through a lot, like everyone initially painted this picture, and I mean everyone. And then 6 to 9 years later, when they were reinvestigating everything, all of a sudden people were changing their relationships. People were remembering things. It was weird.
But a lot of books were being written, a lot of interviews. People like that.
well, the thing is that he'd already gone on one of those trips, and it was on one of those trips he had an affair the whole time, and she knew about it.
Yeah, he went on several and always had an affair.
Yeah.
So maybe the girl heard something.
Well, sometimes people can be nervous,
Right.
saying something as a child. They may be scared, an entire family slaughtered in a vicious way, and maybe she was scared about that. But I'm like you, if you're not saying it from the beginning, I really don't trust you saying it later.
They were next door neighbors. I thought I read where
I didn't.
it was above it.
Yeah, I thought all the Fort Hood, everything like that is single.
So I want to why did he cover her chest with the top? So you can see right here, this is Colette.
And that's a bath mat. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. It is
Oh.
very weird.
Well, that's the pajama top, and that white thing there is a bath mat.
So
Really?
right here is the blue is the pajama mat, and you could see the blood all over her head because she was struck first.
Right.
Here is the pajama top, and you can see the ice pick holes. So I just think that's a little bit weird for him to put on top of her, because when he fended off the fight in the living room, the ice pick holes they wouldn't have even been there.
Was
Yeah.
she nude on the top?
No.
No, it looks like she had,
Bottoms on.
yeah, it looks like she had her pajamas on, and there's her top right there. So
Well,
yeah,
it was raised up and he just, I know he did it, but I mean, he could say it was raised and he put it there. And
The thing about the pajama top, though, to me, it definitely lines up with some of her wounds, supposedly. But it makes zero sense for him to, because supposedly the ice pick did not like tear the pajama top. So the self-defense wounds were, or the self-defense angle doesn't make sense for him to be attacked with it on. But but you could say that the other thing too, like if she had grabbed a hold of his pajama top, there wouldn't be defense tears. And it makes no sense to me for him to lay the pajama top on her and then stab her with it.
I think the reason he did that is to get, basically he had no evidence that he was attacked. There was no blood on it. There were no holes on it. There were nothing in his pajama top to support his story. So I think that he put it on top of her, stabbed her so that he would have holes in his pajama top, and then he could contaminate the pajama top because none of his blood was on there. So he had to explain it. So instead he puts the pajama top on her to get it contaminated with all of her blood. So I think it was to cover up that there was no evidence he was attacked. So he had to make holes and contaminate it with her blood.
but he's smart though. I don't think he'd just stab her through his.
Another
Right?
interesting thing about the pajama top is that there was also holes in the back. So whenever they first came on the scene, they were like, he saw it and it was front and back. And he was like, there's no way if he has all those wounds on his back that he's alive. It's still, again, like I'm with you, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I understand the blood contamination and everything,
Yeah,
but
I
did
do
he
too.
not think?
Yeah, he
That
thought
they were-
Probably not, because I think he didn't intend to kill his entire family that night. I think he got into a rage and it was too late and he had to cover up after. So to me, the crime scene makes sense of a person who was covering up after the fact, not necessarily planning it beforehand.
I would have kept it on and just,
I completely
yeah.
agree. It just still doesn't, like, what was
Seems
he thinking,
strange.
putting the pajama top on there and just poking holes? It's like,
yeah.
Well, she was actually stabbed. We'll get into that in a second because the holes and her stabs wounds actually match perfectly.
yeah, some of them do. I said that earlier, but still, it just
No,
doesn't.
all of them. The way they folded it up, the scientists were able to, like the way he would have laid that on there, they were able to perfectly match everything. Now, is that actual science or not? But that surprised me because that wasn't in Fatal Vision when it was written, and it was things that came out later. So
Yeah.
and we'll get more in depth on it. The MPs, they arrive, they survey the scene. Colette had been stabbed 16 times with a knife in the chest and neck, and then 21 more times in the chest with an ice pick that was driven all the way to the hilt. She'd also been hit at least 6 times in the head. Both her arms were broken, so she's probably trying to defend herself, but the girls were even worse. Kimberly had been struck in the head at least 6 times. One blow shattered her skull, and another the left side of her face. She was hit with such force that it splintered her nose and cheek, and a piece of bone was sticking through the skin beneath her eye. She'd also been stabbed in the neck with a knife several times. The wounds were so close and precise that the pathologist could only estimate 8 to 10 wounds. So it was really hard.
Didn't he use a bat?
A club.
A club. Oh,
Well, I found out later it was actually a piece of wood from their bed,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
slats.
the wood. Oh, one of the slats.
All the weapons came from within the house.
So they matched 21 ice pick stabbings that went straight in, and there were 48 total on his pajama top. But it was folded in the same way that would account for the majority of them, 42 or whatever.
I think
And
she
in
was
the-
probably already dead. And he put the pajama top on top of her, and then just because they went straight down. It wasn't like she was fighting it off. It's like she's laying there and the pajama
I
top is
agree.
on her.
I-
Now, baby Kristen, she had one finger was cut to the bone. It was probably when she tried to protect herself as well, even though she's, I think, only 2. And then she had 33 stab wounds, 12 in the back, 4 in the chest, and 1 in the neck from a knife, and then 15 more from an ice pick in her chest. The only survivor was Jeffrey MacDonald, who was found lying with his arm around Colette, which I thought was just very convenient for him to be laying there next to his wife with his arm over her. So of course we saw, Colette's wounds or crime scene photos here. This is a baby.
Ah. And that one actually had defensive wounds.
And this is the other one.
And
So,
one of the children had flesh under her fingernail too.
which they lost.
Right.
They lost it?
Yeah.
Oh.
And they also lost his pajama pants, which would have been huge for me.
You know, it's a lot like the Manson murders.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought I had saved these.
Right before this.
Oh.
Let me see if I can find them. So when you look at, here's the bloody footprint right here. And we'll get to that in a little bit, that was found, and was one of the reasons why they do not believe that anyone else killed them.
Again, he's the only survivor, the husband. So
Mhm. And his personality traits are very similar to what we've been seeing.
So here's some of the stab wounds into Colette. And then the baby.
oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were, it was, to me, it was what you would call overkill.
Mhm. Was that
And
last wife?
That was one of the
Colette or
oldest
the
daughters.
child?
2 were of the kids and 1 of her. So it's like overkill to me is personal.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a drug craze, so if you're in a drug craze, which he might have been, but if you're in a drug craze, that's the only reason I can see for overkill.
Yeah.
Unless you're a serial killer, there's some but usually when you see that level of violence, it's someone that knows him. The other thing that's very interesting is all the weapons were from the house. The ice pick, the knife, and the wood. If you're
But
going
he
to
did
go
not.
in somewhere to kill people, you're not going to go in without something.
Yeah.
Killing the children, though, I just never understood why he would do that.
Me neither.
Never.
Well, I liked on Wilderness of Error, the prosecutor said, let's say that, well, I don't remember if he said this, but let's say that he was in a fit of rage and struck his wife and, went ahead and just out of rage continued to kill her. But then he actively made a decision to go and kill the babies.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
And they have a theory on that, which I think we get to in the notes.
Yeah.
So the police always look at the spouse, or the survivor, because like True Crime Garage, they said, here this dude's a Green Beret, and they kind of went into some of his training. He wouldn't have been trained to the level Green Berets were as far as hand-to-hand combat, but he would have been trained in a lot of the way a Green Beret was. And so here you've got this Green Beret, and they said anytime, and I agree with them, that you go into a house to kill, you're going to eliminate the threat, which is always going to be the male.
Right.
And you're dang sure not going to go into a military Green Beret officer's house and not have a weapon. So to them, it's like, here you have this overkill, this brutal killing of this wife and her 2 daughters, pregnant wife and 2 daughters, and then the man escapes. A little strange.
I agree 100% on the knife that he pulled out of her chest. It was actually a completely different knife than was used to stab. It was really weird. And he denied having any 3 of those items.